up, party people, and welcome back to my channel. So today we're doing an extension to my This or That series. So today we're comparing high-end makeup versus drugstore affordable makeup. This isn't necessarily a dupes video. I mean, there might be some dupes in here, I don't know. It's really just about finding alternatives or things that perform similarly that can give us a similar effect, and just figuring out if the high-end makeup is actually worth the price. So make sure you check out the playlist up here. It'll also be linked in the outro after you get done watching the video. Without telling you which side is which, the high-end side rings in at $259 and the drugstore side rings in at $69. But I want you guys to vote, which side do you think is the high-end side? So this is my right side. It may be left for you, but we're gonna call this the right side. So do you think my right side is the high-end side, or do you think the left side is the high-end side? So let me do a little eye shot. So yeah, vote below. I know that these first two are not dupes. If anything, I think that the drugstore version is just an alternative, which sometimes that's enough. The high-end version that we're trying to dupe or find an alternative for is the very expensive $68 Makeup by Mario Ethereal Eyes eyeshadow palette. It's limited edition, and all these influencers that are raving about it and using it in tutorials and stuff like that, they're not gonna be using it either, so you may be less likely to use yours. I know that's how I am. So the potential alternative is this $18 ColourPop 1111 palette. Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious that ColourPop wasn't directly trying to dupe the Mario palette, but I do think that they took a lot of inspiration from it. But there are the ColourPop shimmers. So I feel like these are very, very opaque. They're very buttery. And then here are the Mario shimmers. These are just a different type of shimmer. Like, I feel like these, I don't want to say they're glitter topper. I just feel like they're more of a sheer kind of shimmer formula. Like, they're not super opaque, whereas the ColourPop ones are definitely more of that opaque shimmer. I was doing some swatches earlier, just kind of playing around, and the shimmers in the ColourPop palette are not very similar to the Mario shimmers. Like I said, the opacity level is different. I feel like the shimmers are identical to the Ulta Beauty bouncy eyeshadows. These are like $9 at Ulta. They go on sale all the time though. This is the shade Sugar Cookie from the Ulta Beauty bouncy eyeshadow collection. As you can see, it's kind of got that sheerness to it, but it's a very high quality feeling. Let me just do a random swatch from the Mario palette. So there's one of the shades, and I don't know if you can see, like, I can see it in person, but like the way these feel, they almost feel identical. Here is Champagne Sorbet. I've actually not used these shades from the Ulta line. Actually, Champagne Sorbet and this other one that I swatched from the Mario palette look very similar. Alrighty, matte swatches. So ColourPop is this arm and Mario is this arm. There may be a couple of dupey kind of shades, but I feel like just overall, a lot of these shades from each palette would look the same on the eyes. So let's do high-end on this side and drugstore on this side. So starting with the Mario palette, I'm gonna go into this shade right here just to set my eye primer down. It's a matte biscuit nude kind of shade. So just to try to control the variables as much as possible and try to get the same outcome, I'm gonna be using the same brushes as I go. So I'm just gonna be doing a little like swap in between. So I'm just gonna kind of clean that off and then go into this one right here in the palette. And the ColourPop palette's probably the closest one to being able to use for setting my eye primer. So I'm gonna do that on this side. It's a little bit darker, not as bright, but I think it can serve as the same purpose. So I'm gonna use the most similar shades I see in either palette. So I'm gonna start with this matte, very light mauve pink right here for my transition shade. And the mattes do have quite a bit of kick up and debris in the pan, so you can probably see right there all the fallout. I can take that as long as the shadow is a good quality one. And then going into this shade in the ColourPop palette. There's some kick up in this one, but it's definitely not as much as a Mario shade. Like, I feel like these are pressed in there just a little bit more firmly. Shade wise, they're very similar. I do feel like the ColourPop one may be a tad bit more cool tone. It took less time for me to build this one up to get the same level of intensity and pay off as the Mario shades. All right, next we're gonna go into this matte grayish taupey shade right here and put that right below the pink. And going into this one over here in the ColourPop palette. This shade is a lot lighter than the Mario. Yeah, no matter how much I build this shade up, it's not really darkening a whole lot to be as dark as this taupey shade. So let's see, I'm gonna go into this cocoa brown shade at the very top of the Mario palette. I'm pretty much doing the same thing with that one that I did with that taupey shade. Looks a little patchy. It's one of those that kind of, I guess it kind of oxidizes the longer it sits on your eye, and especially if you try to build it up, but it's definitely looking a little uneven. I mean, it's not bad when my eyes are open, and the tone itself is very pretty, but it does look a little wonky. I think this shade right here in the ColourPop palette is probably the closest to that cocoa brown, but I feel like overall the tones in those cocoa brown shades are very close. But again, I feel like this side it's blending on better. I'm not having as big of a issue with, you know, getting patchy and stuff, and it just overall looks more clean cut. Okay, so now I'm gonna go into that really pretty shimmer in the Mario palette that's kind of in the middle. This is definitely something that if you were really light-handed with this, it could be a very sheer wash of color and shimmer. Like, I feel like this is pretty in your face because I applied it was a pretty heavy swatch, but if you just applied a very light amount and just very lightly tapped it on your lid, it could be, you know, super subtle. I don't know if this is gonna work out. This may not be close at all, but I'm gonna try to go into this pinky taupey shimmer in the ColourPop palette. Like, it looks, when you swatch it, it looks pretty close. Man, this just looks smoother. I do wanna use these dark browns in the palette for shadow liner. So in this palette, I'm gonna go into this shade right here, which is a dark brown. So here are the eyes pretty much done. So I'm not trying to discredit or dismiss an entire population of people that love and rave about the Mario palette, but I don't get it. If I were to do a blind test, like if I didn't know which was on which side, like if someone did my makeup and they didn't tell me, I would 100% guess that this side was a high-end side. This is not worth 70 bucks. Sorry, maybe I suck. The formula, in my opinion, is better than the Mario formula. I feel like these just fuse together so much easier. Like, they were way easier to work with and blend out. They just look softer and more diffused on the eyes. All right, so because of order of operation and trying to make sure everything has time to dry, I'm gonna go ahead and skip to some primer and we'll move back up to mascara. So I'm sure you guys are tired of hearing about this. I know that I'm tired of hearing about it, but I want to share an alternative to it that you've probably never heard of before, because I feel like we're always seeing the same dupes. So yeah, we're trying to find a dupe for the Charlotte Tilbury Hollywood Flawless Filter. I have the shade 4.5 medium, which is too dark for me, but really doesn't matter. But to be honest, I feel like this is something you could easily DIY yourself. Like, you could easily mix in, you know, any illuminizer kind of product, like a cheaper one, with your foundation, like just a very light amount of your foundation, and get the same effect. So this is the Ulta Beauty Inner Glow Illuminating Lotion. I will say the kicker is that the Ulta Beauty one only comes in one universal shade, whereas the Charlotte Tilbury one comes in multiple shades for different skin tones. So we'll do Ulta Beauty down here and Charlotte Tilbury up here. I feel like the amount of glow and sheen is pretty similar. Like, obviously the shades are different. Let's go ahead and do the Charlotte Tilbury one on this side. All I've got on right now is moisturizer. People love to use this underneath their foundation to really enhance the luminosity and the sheen. All right, there's the Ulta Beauty side. So yeah, the Charlotte one does have more coverage with it. Very little, but it does have a little bit more to where I feel like you could wear this as like a skin tint. So if you're not really about the coverage aspect of the Charlotte Tilbury one, then you might like the Ulta Beauty one, or you might find it to be enough for you to get the same effect under foundation. So I'm just gonna go ahead and move on. We'll see how they sit down. Next up, we're trying to find a dupe for a very viral mascara, and I'm pretty proud of this one because I've not heard one person say they found a dupe for it. So this is the Benefit Fan Fest mascara. I've seen it do wonders on people, so I'm not gonna discredit that, but for me, it's nothing super special. It's good, but again, like, I'm a pretty big critic of high-end makeup, so I expect it to be so much more different and so much better than anything else I've ever tried, especially on the affordable side. So the wand, I've seen a lot of people say that this is super innovative, it's different, it's unique, they've never seen anything like this before. I couldn't put my finger on it for the longest time, but I've seen this wand before. It's with one that's been out for such a long time, and that is the Essence Lash Princess Sculpted Volume Mascara, the one in the purple font. Here's the Benefit one, and here is the Essence one. But look at this, like, the only difference is that the Essence one is a tad bit longer, but the shape is the same, the curve is the same, the density and the thickness, they're almost the exact same wand. So yeah, I went ahead and recurled my lashes, and we're gonna do the Benefit one on this side and Essence on this one. So there is one layer of Benefit Fan Fest. So pretty full. I do like the curve to this because I feel like it really hugs the lashes nicely and it just really kind of promotes a curl. Okay, I may have gone too ham on this side, but I don't know how to stop it. Yeah, Essence Sculpted Volume and Benefit Fan Fest. I feel like they're very similar, except I feel like the Essence one with the first layer is more dark, it's more thickening, it's more volumizing, but lengthwise, very close. So I personally think that if I applied another layer of the Benefit one, I'd probably get a very close effect. So let me go ahead and do that. All right, there's a second coat of Benefit. So it's a good formula. It's a very fluffy kind of volume. It's very lengthening. So I feel like the wands are definitely dupes, but the effects are not. So going back to the glowy products on my face. I kind of feel the same way. I feel like they've set down quite a bit. Like I feel like every time I see these being used on social media, people's skin is super glowy and all this stuff, but I feel like in real life it's not that intense. For foundation, this is the Estee Lauder Futurist Skin Tint Serum. It has SPF 20. It says it's infused with botanical oils. I don't know what that means. Listen, all these brands have a way of making their products out to be like they're really special when in actuality they're not. So for the whole botanical oil thing, it says it contains meadow foam seed, calendula, and rosehip oils, but it's a whopping $53. So I couldn't help but notice that this is eerily similar to the L'Oreal True Match Nude Hyaluronic Tinted Serum Foundation and also the newer Maybelline Superstay 24-Hour Skin Tint. And I've used this a few times and I really can't figure out the best way to apply it because it's a very watery kind of consistency, like it's very drippy. Just based on the few times I've worn this, I feel like it might be closer to the Maybelline Skin Tint versus the L'Oreal one. I could be wrong. I've been wrong about a lot in this video so far. The other times I've worn this, I've laid it down with my fingers and then gone into a brush to actually blend it out, but I've not really loved the way it looked. So let me apply it with my fingers this time around. So it does blend out fairly well with my fingers. Like I don't really see any major streakage. Definitely light coverage, is not covering up a whole lot of my acne back here. I forgot to mention I have normal acne prone skin. There's what one layer of the Estee Lauder one looks like. So it's very natural. Like it's a very skin-like satin kind of finish. It's not overly glowy or overly matte. So going into the skin tint from Maybelline and apply it with my fingers. By the way, this is $18 at its most expensive. So at Ulta it's $18, but Walmart, Target, Amazon, places like that, it's around $14. It does go on sale. So as you can see, this does give me better coverage right out the gate than the Estee Lauder one. Like I'm still seeing a lot of my blemishes peeking through on the Estee Lauder side. So I'm gonna go back to the Estee Lauder side. I'm gonna wipe my hands clean and we're gonna try to build up on my blemish zones. I will say the other day I wore this and I had pretty bad acne and I felt very self-conscious about my acne and my skin the entire day, which is most days, granted. And the Estee Lauder one I felt like sat on my skin in a not very flattering way. Like it almost looked kind of patchy around my blemishes and stuff. And that kind of comes with the nature of lighter coverage products when you have blemishes and acne to cover up. It can make it look more dirty or like you didn't blend things out properly just because of the nature of them. But I'm looking for foundations that make me feel better about my skin. Now the Maybelline one, it definitely builds up. You can let that first layer dry and it will definitely continue to build. They do stay on the skin very similarly. They have a very similar glow and finish to them, but coverage wise, definitely a lot more with the Maybelline. For concealer, we have the ever so popular Too Faced Born This Way Multi-Use Sculpting Concealer. And this is a newer discovery for me. Like this one quickly hiked its way up to top 5 status. This is the Kokie Double Time Full Cover Concealer. Too Faced is $35 and Kokie is $10. But in the Kokie, I'm in the shade Light Tan. I'm in the shade Almond and Too Faced. So let's start with the Too Faced one. But something I've noticed about the Too Faced one is that it's very smoothing and it's that really nice, like milky, creamy kind of finish under the eyes. It's not too drying or anything. It sets up and stays put very well. But the Kokie one is the exact same qualities. So freaking airbrushed and flawless, and it just lasts so well in the under eye area without creasing or anything. I don't think I use more on this side, but I feel like this one is more opaque and a little bit's going further. Like I feel like, yeah, that's quite a bit brighter. But I feel like the way these wear and the finish and just how they sit on the skin on the under eye area are so freaking similar. So I do want to go in and layer up the Too Faced one just a little bit just to see if I can get it to look more close to the Kokie one. And by the way, I am like flipping the sponge over so I'm not using the same side for both concealers. Both blend out extremely fast. They just sink right in. Even to the touch, these feel like I've used the same concealer. Like just the set down and everything is so similar. So there's what each side looks like. Very smoothing, very creamy, milky, just top notch. For bronzer, so this one I'm 100% sure that this is literally as close of a dupe as you could possibly get. So the Laura Geller Baked Body Frosting in the shade Tahitian Glow has been a long time love of mine. This is one of the first satin finish bronzers I've ever tried. It's marbleized, but it just gives you the most realistic tan you could possibly get with a powder bronzer. I know this one's not been very popular, but this is one that I always felt like should be more popular because it's so unique. But I feel like it came out at a time when people were more into matte bronzers and contouring and stuff like that, and we just did appreciate satin finish bronzers at the time. And you can still find this at some places. It's more hard to get your hands on, but it's pretty expensive. I think it's still like 50 bucks or something like that. It'll last you forever. This is the Ulta Beauty Baked Bronzer in the shade, I guess this is the only shade, but this is what, like 12 bucks. It's the same kind of finish, the tone's the same, the color's the same. There's Laura Geller and there's Ulta Beauty. So yeah, same tone, same color, same depth, same amount of sheen and shimmer, and you can't detect the shimmer on the skin. Like, it just looks like luminosity and sheen on the skin, but it's not so much to where it's gonna make you look oily or greasy. So if you have oily skin, don't worry about it. I'm gonna do the Laura Geller on this side, and it does not take much, but I actually do like this better with a more natural hair brush versus like a synthetic hair. For some reason, this baked formula just works better with natural bristles. But there's what it looks like. Very quick. Yeah, same thing on this side. Ooh, it's so pretty. There's Ulta Beauty. There's Laura Geller. For blush, I may be reaching with this one. I honestly have no idea if this is going to work out, but I just got a mini version of a Pat McGrath blush from Sephora. This is the Divine Blush in the shade Divine Rose. I thought, you know what? That's pretty simplistic. Like, that's a pretty common color. Surely I've got a dupe for that one because it's really just a matte mauve-y, purpley undertone pink. I did a quick little swatch right before I started the video, and this may or may not be a dupe at all. This is the Catrice Air Blush Matte in the shade Spy Space. Here is Pat McGrath, and here is the Catrice. So I feel like the Pat McGrath one's a little more of that purpley undertone, but I'm wondering if that will be that different on the actual skin. See, on the skin, they don't look all that different. And I mean, this one's like 8 bucks. This one is not. So let's do Pat McGrath on this side. And there's not really any kick up or debris or anything in here. Like, it's pressed in there pretty well. But let's go ahead and stipple this where we stipple it. Sometimes I feel like these matte blushes that, I don't know, kind of get washed out when you use a big fluffy brush. They actually apply better sometimes with a more dense brush like this, something that you would use for, you know, creams. But yeah, there's what the Divine Rose looks like from Pat McGrath. So she's pretty. She's simple, but she's pretty. A Catrice on this side. This one has a little more kick up in the pan. So same thing back here. Ooh, this one's more pigmented. Okay, there's the Catrice side. So yeah, that took about half the time to apply that. Like, this is way more pigmented and opaque than the Pat McGrath one. But something that I love about the Catrice blushes, and if these are so underrated, like if you don't know about these and you like powder blushes, you definitely need to check these out. But they have such a unique, and maybe unique's not the right word, but I feel like the airbrushed matte finish is unique for them, because I feel like with a lot of powder blushes, it kind of goes into the territory of looking really dry and just too powdery, but these are truly that super soft, buttery, creamy, airbrush looking matte finish, which to me is different. So yeah, there's what that looks like without any, you know, I need to blend around the edges and stuff. But yeah, there's Catrice and there's Pat McGrath. So color-wise on the skin, very similar. There is more warmth, I feel like, with the Catrice side, but when it's all said and done, does it really make a difference? No. I'm gonna go ahead and go off camera and finish with the rest of my face. I'll be right back and we will do my final thoughts. We'll be right back with Jerry's final thought. I don't think that the eyeshadow palettes are exact dupes. I think that the ColourPop one's a good alternative. It's a cheaper, more affordable alternative, but I don't think that these are exact by no means. In many regards, I could argue that the ColourPop one is actually better. That's just personal preference, but I do think that I like the way the ColourPop shadows went on better. I think that it looks overall more seamless and more soft, more gradient. Love the glitter on the Mario palette, but again, I've got that with my $9 little bouncy cream eyeshadows. They're not cream eyeshadows, but just bouncy eyeshadows from the Ulta Beauty collection. Same thing with the Charlotte Hollywood Flawless Filter versus the Ulta Beauty Inner Glow. I think that the Ulta Beauty one does give a similar amount of glow and luminosity, but yeah, you do get more coverage, like a lot coverage with the Charlotte Tilbury one. The mascaras, again, I think we're seeing a running theme here. These are good alternatives, but they're not exact dupes like I thought they would be. The wands are almost exact, but just the amount that each of them pull off, I think that's what makes them slightly different. But when it's all said and done, I think the Essence one is better. The Estee Lauder Futurist Skin Tint Serum and the Maybelline Superstay Skin Tint, say it with me, are just alternatives. The Estee Lauder one is just a lot more light coverage. So this one is definitely more of your traditional skin tint, in my opinion, whereas these borderline being more like foundations, like you can actually build the coverage up. Finish-wise, these are very similar. They do look very similar on the skin. I think that if you have really dry, mature skin, you would like something like this because it's very moisturizing and it lets your skin breathe. I like the way the Maybelline one sits my skin better. It's just more flawless. I like the glow. I'm gonna go out on a limb though and say that the concealers are dupes of each other. I know that the Kokie one is a little more full coverage and opaque right out the gate where I didn't need as much product, but when it's all said and done, the way they wear, the finish, the way they sit on the skin, how they look on the skin, like they look identical. Yeah, I'm gonna redact that statement. I'm not gonna call these dupes. These are also alternatives. Yes, they do look similar on the skin. Yes, they wear similarly, but you can't call something a dupe if something's got more coverage. So I'm pretty picky when I call something a dupe, so I'm not really sure why I did this looking back. So yeah, just wanted to clear my conscience because I didn't feel good about that one. But again, I do think the Kokie one is actually a little bit better. The Laura Geller Baked Body Frosting and the Ulta Beauty Baked Bronzer, these honestly couldn't be closer. I think these are such good dupes of each other. And then the blushes, once again, I don't think these are dupes, but I think that the Catrice blush is actually better than the Pat McGrath one. But yeah, I really hope that you guys enjoyed this series. I hope that it helps you in the way that it was intended to help you. Here's a couple more things for you to check out next. So just venture around the channel, make yourself at home. Subscribe if you're not already, and turn the notification bell on to always see my stuff, and I will see you guys in the next one. Mwah.